I know we don't have a whole lot of time, so I want to make sure if I don't touch base with some of the tuning questions that you have, please see me after the event. I will help everyone individually. More than happy to look at your bows individually, answer any questions. Want to be respectful for the other seminars that are coming in behind me, so I'm going to be going probably fairly quick, but I would encourage, please ask any questions that you possibly have, and we'll just get going. So, Douglas Denton. So for the past, my goodness, 17 years, I had the the privilege of designing recurve bows for Hoyt. I've been able to be part of the Olympic Games from the 2012 Games up to present, kind of behind the scenes, helping athletes, working with different countries with their equipment, tuning, and it's been an amazing career that I honestly didn't think that when I started my journey of picking up a recurve bow back in 1994, when I got my very first bow, that it would leave me in front of all of you great people, and still playing the sport. And I still shoot, not quite every day, but I probably shoot around 4 to 5 times a week still, and still love shooting my recurve, shoot compound as well, and just had a lot of fun doing it. So again, I'm going to go through a lot of this presentation. If anyone has any questions or wants any of these slides, I'm going to have at the end of it, and hopefully my QR code works, but you can send me messages on Instagram, and I can get your emails, and I'm more than happy to share any of this information with everyone. So keep that in mind as well. So typically with recurve setup, I think a lot of people hopefully knows that it's not a whole lot of equipment you need. You need your biter gauges, Allen wrenches, simplistic. Again, going to go through this, but we're setting up a recurve bow. So we know how to assemble it. Aligning it is the piece that a lot of people can miss. A lot of people might overthink the alignment as well. The important thing when you're lining up a recurve is you want the top and bottom limbs in alignment with each other, along with cutting through the center of the stabilizer, the string cutting through the center of the stabilizer. So there are some questions in regards to how, if you should have your stabilizer fully on the bow, or you just should have a long rod. I personally think you should have your extension, if you shoot one, your V-bar on there as well, everything completely done. The comments of, what if my stabilizer isn't straight? At some point it doesn't even matter, because you want to be able to line up your bow with the stabilizer you currently have. If you have unlimited resources and you have hundreds of stabilizers that you can put on your bow, then great, change those out if you think the stabilizer is not straight. But at the end, what I always do is I line up the top and bottom limb with each other, make the plane of the string within the body of the stabilizer, and then that's the starting point for setting up your bow. The biter gauges, typically, well, only use 2, and I put them as close to the riser as possible. The reason I do that, that becomes the furthest point away from the string. So when you have your 2 points the furthest away, when you're making an alignment, that actually will be the most accurate place to align your bow. So once we have the alignment done with that, that's when I look at the limb tips. Does everyone understand how to look at a recurve tip to see if it's twisted or not? Any questions in regards to that? If you have questions on that, please, let's come see me afterwards. I want to walk you through with how to really look at that, because it really is one of the most important parts. Getting your bow lined up and checking your limb tips to make sure that the limb tip is actually uncurling straight, incredibly important for accuracy and forgiveness. So if you don't know how to look at that, please come see me, walk you through with how I personally look at it, and then can talk to you about ways that some manufacturers, when I was working for Hoyt, we had a system that you could actually kind of pivot and rock the limb to be able to change the tip. Other companies don't have that, but there are other techniques that I can help you with if you have a set of limbs that maybe isn't perfect. We can always make them look as good and as perfect on your bow as we possibly can. So with the alignment, I made this chart. This is kind of a quick, easy cheat guide that that I came up with years ago to make sure that I'm moving. Years ago we had shim systems, so to move the shims the correct way. And today most bows will just have set screws that you move back and forth to align the dovetail. So again, this is something I'm more than happy to share with anyone. So reach out through Instagram, and I'll be able to walk you through and be able to email this to you. So the common aligning question. So the back of a lot of people use the holes on the back of the riser has references. And technically on all manufacturers, regardless of who they are, they should be in the center of the bow. Sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. And that is typically due to some machining issues. It doesn't mean the bow is not straight. So with any manufacturer, but I don't use those holes at all. I don't use any of the riser has a reference for Olympic recurve. Now, for bare bow, I don't know how many bare bow archers we have in here, but for bare bow, I do use the riser for a reference for alignment. There is no necessarily biter gauges for a riser. However, I have designed some that I just use personally. I keep in my kit that I can, and they fundamentally look exactly like this, but they clip on the back of the riser itself. And with that allows me to have my 3 points of reference for lining up a bare bow. So again, I would start with a bare bow and line up the limbs with each other. There is no stabilizer for me to line up, so I use the riser itself. I don't do that with Olympic recurve because we still have a stabilizer on our Olympic recurves. We have a lot of mass weight typically on the end of the rod, and you want to make sure that that mass weight is in alignment with the limbs themselves. And it doesn't necessarily have to be perfectly dead center of the actual riser. Theoretically it should be, but it has a range within the limb adjustment systems with all manufacturers that as long as you're not maxing out that adjustment, it's okay. The bow is going to perform at the highest level possible. If you ever have a bow, regardless of the manufacturer, and you max out that limb adjustment, that's when you need to start to dig in a little bit deeper to see if the limbs are good or bad, or if the riser is good or bad, because some combination there, if you have to max out any adjustment system, that tends to be something that I would always dive into a little bit more. Want to make sure that those risers and limbs are working at the best they possibly can. And all manufacturers, whether it's Hoyt or Win and Win or Wioas, they have that limit that if you do max it out, then they should work with you to be able to resolve that. But so keep that in mind as well. Limb tip. This is kind of hard to see. When I was talking about the limb tips on the, but this is what I'm looking at. I don't know if you can see that this limb would be considered twisted because the string isn't necessarily going perfectly straight. So when looking at a limb tip, I'm looking at it in this orientation. I'm trying to get the tip of the limb centered into the limb itself. And then I want that string to project perfectly straight. If you see that string going to the left or to the right, there is an issue with the limb. Or there's a combination of the limb and the riser. And what I have found typically with the adjustment system, just moving the limb left and right, typically does not resolve that issue. Sometimes it has, but keep that in mind that there's other techniques that we can use to help make sure that that limb is actually going to be working in the most optimum fashion that it possibly can. God bless you. From brace height to full draw. Okay, knocking points. I'm not going to worry about any question on knocking points. Okay, good. This seminar was set up really from beginner to try to, and then talk about some more advanced tuning items. So center shot, real quick on center shot for outdoor arrows. So the most common arrow, and the arrow that has won, I think, almost every single Olympic medal, excluding a couple, is the Eason X10. So when setting up your X10s for outdoors, bare bow or Olympic, The starting place that you want to be is fundamentally having, you can see half of the shaft on the outside of the string is where I would typically start. Most archers at the World Cup or the World Championships, so in the World Championships, was not able to attend the one in Korea this year, so the one in Germany in, what was it, 2023? I was able to be on the practice field, and I got to look at, my goodness, fundamentally every top shooter on the field, including Kim Woo-jin, their equipment, look at their center shot. And what I thought was extremely interesting is, regardless of your draw length, regardless if you're male or female, poundage, size of X10 that you were shooting, the center shot was from half of the shaft to maybe a quarter of the shaft on the outside of the string for their center shot. Every single archer. So that was something that I hadn't had the ability to do in the past. So when setting up your bows, to be able to have that center shot, and just, it's a starting point. It doesn't mean that that's where all of us here are going to end up. But it is a good place when you look at some of the best shooters on the planet, and that's where they have their bows, regardless if it's male or female. It's a really good place to start. And then you have to start to go in and do some fine tuning, which we'll touch base on. So I was trying to, so this is something I think can be missed pretty quickly or easily. The putting your arrow in relationship to where your cushion plunger is, and this is what I was trying to show. It's difficult to show in a photo, but you want to be able to have the quadrant of the arrow touching the center of the cushion plunger. So you don't want it too high, you don't want it too low. Now, if you're going to favor it in one direction, put it slightly high of the center of the cushion plunger. The reason we want to have it slightly high and not low, when you shoot a recurve bow and you loose the string, you actually have some downward knock travel. So the arrow is actually traveling downward. So it's flexing into the bow and then also coming down. So it's going to compress slightly the arrow rest. This is another, I'm going to touch point on the arrow rest itself. Most everyone shoots, I guess the most common arrow rest right now out there is the Shibuya for Olympic recurve. Years ago, there was a company, when I first started archery, it was a ARE. I'm not sure how many people ever shot an ARE rest. It was just a simple flipper rest. But what they had that was different was different stiffnesses of wires. So making sure you maintain your wire and play with different rests actually is another tuning piece that I think a lot of people overlook today versus what they did back, honestly, in the 90s when I started shooting archery. And it's something that is such a fine-tuned method of if you have a stiffer wire or a weaker wire, it can affect the overall forgiveness and accuracy of our bows. There's not a lot of options out there today to actually change the wires. So changing arrow rest is something to definitely consider if you're having some issues with your grouping. The flexing, that downward knock travel, and the force that the arrow applies to the rest itself is critical. Again, and it's so most people probably don't replace the arm of their arrow rest either. That is something that a lot of companies will actually sell replacements. I would recommend replacing it if you've had the same arrow rest on, let's call it, for a couple of years. It's a really cheap piece to look into, to replace and kind of maintain your equipment. So something to definitely not overlook there. String material. Get a lot of questions on string material. What's the right string material that I should use for Olympic recurve? These are the most common string materials that that we'll find at a World Cup or Olympic Games. The Korean national team all use the Spectra 652. So 652 by BCY is truly the original fast flight string material that was made, my goodness, back in the 90s. They use 20 strands, and it doesn't matter if you're male or female, doesn't matter the poundage they shoot, that is what they set up for the Korean national team. It's what I currently still use on my bow. I know that Gash Bowstrings has the Recurve Plus material. It was helped develop by Brady Ellison. It's a very popular material out there as well. I don't know the actual makeup of the material. I don't know what fibers they're actually using. And then of course 8125 for Recurve is immensely popular at the World Cup and Olympic Games as well. The reason I think these string materials work the best is there is some dynamic movement and flex to a string. So we all know that we string our bows up, brand new string, what we refer to as stretch, so it will lengthen and it will change. Now, there gets a point with all the string materials that we feel pretty confident that they stop moving. Typically, when I build a new string, I will give it the proper amount of twist. I have played around, so a question I get with twisting the bowstring, I've played around with it with a lot of twist where you take the string off and it almost like wants to curl up. And then I've had strings that you just put minimum twist in. As long as that string is round, I haven't seen a big effect on actual grouping and tuning for myself. I know in the past there were some US archers that would go one way or the other. I know older archers, Vic Wonderly, there was a silver medalist in the 2000 Olympics. I know he historically would have a string that was so twisted that literally when you took it off, it would kind of just curl up. It was the most extreme case that I personally have ever seen, but that's just one example. Now what happens, and the reason I think with the string material becoming really important, is when we shoot, the string and everything goes forward, so the limbs are flexing forward. The reason we don't want to use a string material that is engineered for compound is if you can imagine, let's say we have a steel cable, has a string, so it has no give, and the limbs are going forward. Those limbs will want to continue to move forward, and if that string is so rigid and doesn't allow any movement or flex, it actually puts a lot of force on the tips of the recurve limb itself, and it can cause recurve limbs to fail. Where I really discovered this, it was while working at Hoyt, and the testing material or the testing criteria that we had for handles was 2,000 dry fires at 30-inch draw with 65-pound long recurve limbs. So at the full length of that, it was around 70, 75 pounds, and that was just full on dry fires. Now, what that was doing was testing the durability of the riser itself to make sure it's not going to fail. What I found years ago, the older president, his name was Randy Walk, was switching the whole company over to BCYX material for compound and didn't want any other string material in the building at the time, so I was forced to do my testing with a compound string material. Now, the year prior, we did a test for a different riser, and when you're doing a test and it's such a violent test of an actual dry fire, you will break limbs. It's just the nature of the test, and I would typically break around 15 sets of limbs to get 2,000 dry fires to test the integrity of the riser. Using BCYX material for a recurve, I broke 75 pairs of limbs on the same test. So that's when it was like, it really does matter for us as archers to use the right string material. A softer string material, one that has dynamic flex like all three of these do, makes the bow more forgiving, keeps our bows from hopefully ever failing, but it gives us the best shot of performing at the highest level. So keep that in mind. So string material does really matter. Okay, so this is a piece that I think a lot of people can overlook. Nocks. And I'm not sure, I'll be honest, I'm not sure if I have. Yep, so arrow weight, grain. Okay. We're going to hit all three of these pretty quickly. So when you're fine tuning, we do our bare shaft test. We get our bare shaft in the group at 30 meters or whatever distance you're comfortable shooting. So bare shafting there's some archers that will bare shaft at 70 meters. When I was working with the German national team prior to the 24 games, They actually will shoot I think they had 3 dozen arrows piece, or maybe it was 4 dozen. They shot every single one of those arrows at 70 meters, no fletching, bare shafts, until they had all of those arrows in a group. They did this indoors though, so keep this in mind. It was all indoors, no elements. And they would turn the nocks, they would re-glue the points until those arrows all were in relatively the same group. If they had any arrows outside of that group, those arrows went, I think at this time, those arrows actually went into the trash. So for us, typically we don't have 4 dozen brand new sets of X10s. I know I don't. And, but I'm also not sure if it's truly needed to go tune your bow to that level. I think it's an option. It's something that I personally have never done, and I know for a fact the Korean national team does not do that. The Korean national team will obviously weigh their arrows. They have spine testers. They make sure all of that is perfectly correct. They will actually tune their bows at 30 meters. They get their bare shaft in the group. However, it's on the weaker side of the group, but it still would be considered in the group at 30 meters. Having the bare shaft on the weak side, the reason that becomes a more forgiving place to set it up at is when we are shooting outdoors during the summer and our bows and our bow strings are out in the sun. Everything gets hot and things will change slightly. What I have noticed is when our bows get hot, it doesn't matter the model or the manufacturer, we actually have more change in the recurve string than we do any of the other pieces of equipment. You will notice a tiller shift on the top limb before you see a brace height shift. So keep that in mind. A lot of people will go, yeah, check your brace height, check your brace height. Make sure that that's not changing as the heat of the day comes on. And we know how important the brace height is. When brace height changes, it actually changes the tune of the bow, changes technically the poundage of the bow. So you want to maintain that through all weather conditions. But you will see a slight shift on the top limb, on the tiller, before you see it at the brace height. The reason you see it at the top limb is because the bottom limb typically is a little bit stronger than the bottom limb is stronger than the top limb. So it's going to be pulling it, and so you'll see a slight shift there. So just maintain that. The Nocks and the Nock fit. So let's go. Arrow weight, spin wing. So most common points used at the Olympic Games is 120. I would never recommend it personally. The reason, there's some things with 120 grain points for a lot of archers that they feel like they're getting less wind drift with 120 grain points. I don't believe that is necessarily the case. So I've had the luxury of shooting at the Easton facilities that we have in the U.S. where I could stand inside and shoot outdoors. And the facility where I live currently is in Salt Lake City. It actually has lots of wind, and it sometimes is very difficult to shoot outdoors. So there was a particular day, it was extremely windy. I was standing inside shooting at 70 meters, and I had 120 grain points and I had 100 grain points. They both drifted exactly the same amount. So for my setup and for what I was dealing with and how my shot is, they drifted the same amount. Now one was higher than the other because one arrow is heavier than the other. So keep that in mind. The other thing that changes with 120 grain points versus 100 grain points, it can change your clearance of your arrows. Something most people don't even consider. And I'll be honest, I didn't consider it until here recently, and I was helping a young man in the U.S. and he was having really some difficulty getting proper clearance. And I could not find anything, any issue with his bow. He was shooting X10s. He was shooting around 47, 48 pounds. Relatively, he wasn't a long draw length. I think his draw length is somewhere around 29 inches, 28 and 3/4, 29. But he couldn't get clearance. He was shooting 120 grain points. So the X10 arrow today is has 3 different diameters. So the front of the arrow is a different diameter than the back of the arrow, and then also the barrel of the arrow. With today's limb technology, what's happening with the X10s is it actually will break down the spine and buckle the arrow. So what I mean by that, if you look at extreme high speed video, when we loose the arrow, the back end of that arrow actually will buckle. So it will have a buckling effect being this way, along with the archer's paradox going into the riser. That buckling of it changes dynamically where our nocking point needs to be. It changes the tunability of the arrow and the clearance we're going to get. So what's happening with this young man that I was helping, his arrow was buckling, and it wasn't allowing that energy to really transcend all the way through the arrow to get proper archer's paradox, to get proper clearance off of that around the rest. When we changed to 100 grain points versus 120, it reduced that buckling because from an engineering side of things, you had less mass pushing against it, so it allowed more of that force to go through the arrow. So keep in mind, don't just throw in 120 grain points because that's what some of the top shooters on the planet do. I would say they probably would shoot better scores if they didn't do that in some cases. Brady Ellison always shoots 100 grain points. He's actually played around with some 90 grain points before and shot those in tournaments. Kim Woo-jin shoots 120 grain points. So we have 2 of the best archers on the planet. They both shoot different setups. And so just keep that in mind when it comes to tuning. If you're having some issues, think about with clearance, think about this story that I just gave, and it can give you some other tools to get some better tuning out of it. So the spin wings, this is something that we should all play with. And with really fine tuning. So Nocks, types of Nocks we have, Nock fit, so therefore what serving we're using. Spin wings, whether we're using spin wings, the Jet 6 vanes, Gas Pro Spider vanes, you should test all of them. I really would recommend that. And you do it at 70 meters or whatever distance you feel more comfortable with, whether it's closer or not. And then you shoot 36 arrows, plot them, shoot 36 more, but you keep good records. This is the thing that I think where I know where I can get a little bit lazy when I'm tuning my bow and where I don't keep good notes and good records, and I'm just going, oh, this is what I'm going to use. Playing around with different nocks, whether it's an Easton nock, whether it's a biter nock. The most common nock used at the Olympic Games is a biter nock. And for recurve archers, it is the out nock that goes over the back of the X10, most common nock. Size 1, or what I would call a small groove as well, most common. I don't know any Olympic archers, and it doesn't mean there's not any, I don't know any personally that are shooting a number 2 nock from biter. So, but playing around with nocks is something that's actually pretty easy to do, and also spin wings when we're doing our tuning. Because we can have a mix and match of different combinations of arrows. We can shoot our arrows, make sure we're plotting all of those, and we can actually come up with what we as individual archers is going to group the best and shoot the best for us. So just because some of the best archers in the world are using whatever product they're using, don't just go there. We're all individual archers. We all have different finger sizes, different finger tabs, all the different combinations. So being able to play with all of these different combinations will actually help us find the right setup for us personally. I personally still use the spin wings. I have tested all of them for my particular shot in most weather conditions, whether it's, you know, no wind, a little wind, rain, whatever it might be. The spin wing for how I particularly shoot has always still worked the best for me. So that's the one that I personally still use. I do use biter nocks, and I've played around with either pin nocks from biter, I don't remember what they call it, but the ones that go directly in the back of the X10, I've played with those, and then the ones that go over the shaft. I typically will have the best results with the ones that go over the shaft, like what Kim Woo-jin is shooting as well. So bare shaft tuning, any questions on anything that we've discussed so far? Yes?
I have a question on the grains and the point for short arrows. So my draw length is about 24 and a half. do I go down even further below the 100?
So one, to do that, you have to grind, if you're shooting an X10 with tungsten points, or even a steel point.
I'm actually so short I can't shoot X10s.
I'm sorry?
I'm so, the spine, or my arrow is so short, I can't shoot X10s.
Really?
Yeah, I lose the barrel effect, so there's no point in even paying for them. So at the moment I shoot.
Yeah, they become basically a parallel shaft.
Yeah, so I just shoot advances.
Okay. And that's perfect too. So does everyone know what FOC is? A lot of people don't talk about FOC anymore. I think it's one of those things that the front of the center balance of what the arrow is. Years ago, there would be a lot of conversation on the field of play to talk about the front of center balance and the FOC and what that really means for your arrow. So to really answer your question, one, I'd still start you with 100 grain points. I would measure where that FOC is, and then I think it's worth playing with. So it has been a number of years ago. So I had the privilege of really knowing some of the top shooters, my goodness, since the 70s, to be honest. Darrell Pace, an American archer who won the Olympics in 76 and 84, Olympic gold medal. When I first started archery back in 1994, he lived fairly close to me. I would drive, it was like a 4-hour drive. I would drive up to his house. He and I became friends. I would hang out there. He would teach me, you know, that was kind of my first coach, was Darrell Pace. He would shoot 100 grain points, but there was the Olympic Games that he won. He was actually shooting lighter weight in his points, but one of his Olympics he won, both of them, aluminum arrows. So way different back then, for sure. But he did use lighter grain points. I believe somewhere around that 80 to 90 grains. It's worth trying. So, but you do have to grind them off at the back, and then you can test. But it is something that I would recommend testing. I definitely wouldn't recommend you shooting 120 grain points. It's hard to be able to get enough energy into that arrow at that draw length with those spines, and to really be truly accurate. You're losing so much kinetic energy getting to the target. So I think it's worth playing with, for sure. Any additional question before we, yeah?
You said that most of the archers use 20 strands on the string and number 1 Nocks. Is it possible to actually get number 1 Nocks on 20 strands even with the very thin serving material?
100%. Yep. So with the BCY 652, so I would make the strings 20 strands, and then I would use, it was 015 Halo, I believe, was for the center serving. But yeah, you have to go to at least 014, 015 on the center serving, and it has to be tight to be able to get proper knock fit. Because also, thank you for bringing that up, knock fit is super important, right? We don't want to have the knock so loose that when it comes on, it just falls off. You don't want to have the ears of the knock flare out as you're forcing it on the string. There's a lot, the top shooters right now will actually take their arrows, and if it has any wiggle this way on the string, they try to eliminate that. Playing around with different knocks and knock fit is incredibly important. But it is something too that, you know, going with 20 strands of string, and if you have the wrong center serving, it's not going to work for you at all. It's actually, you know, it's going to be a hindrance because of the knock fit. So you got to pay attention to all of that. It's one of those things I tend to actually forget to talk about, because I've been doing the same type of strings when I make my strings, or when I have a company make them, that I ensure that knock fit is good. And if it's not, then I cut the center serving off and I redo it. So keep in mind that center serving is really important, and to have proper knock fit. So any additional questions? So we kind of roughly talked about the bear shaft. Again, I will share any of this information that we have. So brace height tuning method. Has anyone ever done this? So brace height, to find the right bracelet. A lot of times people will just twist the string and go, here's where we are, and and kind of the bow's the quietest, and they go. What brace height actually will do as you're testing this and you're doing it at, I would recommend actually doing this at 70 meters and plotting your arrows again, making sure that we're good there. And when you change your brace height, it's actually going to change the spine of the arrow slightly. So when you go shorter, it's actually going to stiffen the arrow. When you go longer, it's going to weaken the arrow. And we're talking, when we're doing this with brace height, it is kind of micro tuning, right? Because we're doing a couple twists here and there. We're changing it very small, you know. So keep that in mind with how brace height tuning can affect your setup. Real quick, because I'm running out of time, I want to be able to touch on some mental training things that I think is extremely important. So let me show you. We have walk back tuning. I will share any of this information, guys. Please send me an email and I'll have a link here. And then fine tuning. So we have questions here. Again, I hope this QR code works. It did with my phone, but this is the link to my Instagram, okay, guys? If you send me, get that, and guys, I hope, like I said, if it doesn't work, it's douglas.denton. Send me a message, send me your email, and I'll get you all of this, okay? And then also, again, if you have any questions after the seminar, please come grab me. I will personally walk you through everything that I know. I've had the honor and privilege of working with the best archers on the planet. If I don't know the answer, I promise you I can make a phone call and find it, okay? So, and I am available anytime. Doesn't matter if we're at this event, anytime that people have questions. My journey for archery, my God, you know, when I started it, it was actually back in 1991. I was sitting in high school. I actually know the moment in time that this sport actually changed my life. And I'd been an archer for basically since I was a kid, but I grew up in the country in the state of Kentucky, and I was a bow hunter, and I shot compound bows, and I got into 3D tournaments and shooting 3D archery tournaments. And I was flipping through this archery magazine, setting in geometry class. Kind of ironic that I'm an engineer and I wasn't paying attention in this class. And I came across this ad that was by Hoyt, and it had J-Bars. J-Bars won the Olympics in 1988. And then Butch Johnson had his bow back in that time frame. Butch Johnson, who was a 5-time Olympian, was shooting compound fingers. And the Hoyt ad said the best of both worlds. So J-Bars, Olympic gold medalist. Butch Johnson, the #1 archer, compound archer shooting fingers in the world at the time. That one ad and this one magazine got me down to the path where I'm standing in front of you today, because that was the moment in time that I saw the very first Olympic recurve that I've ever seen in my life. And it was like, that's what I want to go do. It took me 2 years to save up enough money to get my first bow. Got my first bow April 9th, 1994, a couple days after my birthday. And I was off to the races. I was going to be an Olympian. And I had no coach. At that time, I was 2 years into college at that point. And I was studying engineering. I didn't have a coach, but I knew the importance of mental training in any high-level sport. So I went to the psychology department, sports psychology department at the university, and I fundamentally lived there with those professors. Even though it wasn't my degree, they actually took me under their wing. They taught me everything they could. They taught me visualization, relaxation methods. I read their textbooks, and they were absolutely horrific. I would never recommend anyone reading a true sports psychology textbook from the universities. But from that, it actually took me down the path that I want to be able to touch base and give you some tools that truly have helped me achieve the level of success within sport. And not just sport, actually mental training can be done in all of our lives, whether it's our work, whether it's our sport. So the techniques that I ended up using that was the best techniques for myself, working with the sports psychologist, and was actual visualization and positive affirmation cards. So regardless of what goals we have for archery, if we don't write them down, what that is called is a dream. And dreams are very hard to come true if we're not writing them down and being very deliberate on the process that we're going to go down. So for me, I had a big poster board and I had goals written down on it. And let's just say I want to be state champion. Well, in order to be state champion, what do I have to do? And I would break it down. It was like this tree of things that I knew that I had to do, and I'd break it all the way down to as simplistic as, well, I need to get enough sleep, because if I don't get enough sleep, then my body isn't conditioned. I need to hydrate properly. I need to eat properly. I need to exercise. You have to break it down. You break it all the way down. Write everything down on your goals. Keep it where it's visible. I think that's important. Make sure it's in your own handwriting. Extremely important. The psychology behind all of that, you can't, I don't have my phone on me, you can't just have it on your phone and go, here's my goals. That's meaningless. Write it down. The power of the psychology in our minds when we write something down makes it more real in our own handwriting. I use positive affirmation cards. So those were like the 3x5 cards, and I would write things that I wanted to work on, like things that I had a lot of trouble when I was younger shooting off of other people's clickers. So in a tournament, I'm assuming if you have a clicker, we probably all shot through the clicker at one time or another and really been upset with ourselves. So I would put like, I'm comfortable and confident shooting at tournaments. I'm comfortable and confident shooting strong shots in the wind. I shoot 330s at 70 meters, whatever it might be. You have to make the goals and the comments something you want to work on. It has to be positive. The more times that we say something negative in our minds, our subconscious minds cannot tell the difference. Cannot tell the difference whether we're doing it or we're just thinking about it. Our minds are so powerful that we can become an Olympic champion or we can fail. What do we tell ourselves? How many times when we go to an archery tournament, our friends would come off the line, how'd you shoot today? Oh man, I had this one arrow. Freaking I shot through the clicker, I missed the target. We just did that again. How many times? I mean, we've all done it. I don't know anyone that plays this game that hasn't. What we should say is, you know what? I shot 35 amazing shots. I had a great tournament. Regardless of what we're saying in our heads, when we speak it out loud, be positive, that will change how we view the sport. Positive affirmation cards. So I had probably 8 to 10 in my pocket at all times. I would read them probably 50 plus times a day. When I read them, I would never just like look at the card and just memorize it. Even though you have it memorized, I would physically read it. When I'm reading those cards, I visualize what that card is really saying. Like if I was looking for, a score, I would visualize me writing that score. I'd visualize the target. I would see it all. When I was working on something with my form, and I would visualize the shot, both inside my body and outside, like I'm watching a video. Make it crystal clear in your mind. It is so important. This is something that most archers truly miss. We don't write down our goals, and we come to a tournament and want to shoot a score that maybe we've done in practice, maybe, but then we don't set ourselves up for success when we actually come to compete. The mind is so powerful, and there's so many other tools with this, but so when I would wake up in the morning, first thing I did, I'd read those cards. What I would do before I go to bed, read those cards. I'd get up when I was working in the office, be walking to grab something to drink, or just walking out of my office, getting up, pull those cards out, I'm reading them. Driving in my vehicle, come to a stoplight, stop sign. That was a trigger for me. Visualize shooting a bow. Your mind doesn't know the difference. You got to ingrain all of this. We can do all the work on the tuning, and we can have perfect form, but if we don't have our mindset in the proper place to become a champion, we never will. It's a piece that I know for sure the U.S. archers overlook constantly. And I think it's the reason I was only able to get to be in the top 15 in the U.S. when I was really competing, trying to go to every tournament that I possibly could. And I didn't do that because I had properly set up equipment, because I really didn't know what I was doing back then. I didn't have it because I had great form, because I really didn't. I had it because I was more determined than anyone else on the field. And if I could have had all the combinations together, if I would have had a Doug Denton to talk to when I was coming up, I would have, my life would have been different for sure with what I was able to achieve with the sport. So I know I'm out of time, but the sports psychology piece, please come ask me more questions, because I've spent so much time working on it, and I do think it's so important. And there's some other techniques. I'm more than happy to share some of the list of the positive affirmations. Like if y'all have questions, I can share those. And then again, any questions that you have, please grab me. I'm here obviously all weekend, but I'm also in touch anytime that you need anything. Reach out. Did this work for? Okay, perfect. So to reach out to me, and I'll give you any of this information. Guys, if y'all have any questions, there's no secrets in this game. We just have to get all together and talk about it, and we'll figure it out and shoot the best scores that we possibly can and enjoy the sport that's given me so much of my life. So thank you all for coming. I truly appreciate it. Yeah, so thank you.
A little present for you.
Oh, well, thank you so much.
Yes, some cookies, some Dutch delicacy.
Perfect.
Something what you can use for your tuning.
Okay, wait a minute, guys. Can I take a picture with everyone? Let me. Awesome. Thanks, guys.